The bandwidth is being taken up for the charity, so.
Usually,
No, this part of it is slow.
yeah, that's
Published.
It's on? Okay.
I have to realize it's in
Good morning again. So today's share is entitled When Erev Pesach Falls Out on Shabbos. And if you look back on the Jewish calendar, this only happened 4 years ago. But it won't happen again for another 20 years. So we got to get it in now.
20 years?
20 years. Be'ezus Hashem, we should all be Zaycha, if not in here, but at least in Eretz Yisrael, to be Zaycha, to be Mekayim this. Yes, 100%.
For 20 years?
I don't know what technology the share will be broadcast in 20 years from now, but Be'ezus Hashem, it should get there.
Yeah, I share.
Now, this is a topic, if you look back on our share archives, we have a share on this. So you could really ask, hey, Rabbi, we have this week before Pesach, we have next week before Pesach. Why do we even give a share about this? Just refer to the archives. That's definitely an argument. But the way I view things, appreciate people learn through the yeshiva what we call Masechta cycle, right? When you finish a Masechta, what do you say? Hadran Alach, Hadran Alach. We want to come back to you. So just like when it comes to a sugya in Gemara, that you go through a sugya and you come out with certain conclusions, doesn't mean you're going to stick with those conclusions the rest of your life. Next time you have the opportunity to learn the same Gemara, it's actually, I think, laudable to look at it with a fresh perspective and see what do I have now. So too in halachic issues, it's good to know, right? It's good to know what you have as a precedent. If you've gone through the sugya before, how you came out. But to look at it again as a fresh perspective, yes, hopefully as a person people grow, and you never know, all different circumstances. You hear different opinions, different svarim. So I want to tackle this sugya, this whole topic, from a fresh new perspective. Now really you could give a share about Erev Pesach falling out on Shabbos with all the ramifications. You talk about B'dikas Chametz on Thursday night, Tainas B'chorim on Thursday morning, some talk about also on Friday morning. Boy, get busy. And there are a lot of other ramifications. What I want to do today is focus to share really on two specific parts. Part one, discussing the Su'udos of Shabbos this year. And part two, what to do with chametz, leftovers or things you forgot. Yes. So this is what I want to talk about primarily in today's share. So we have touched on this in the past, but I think a focus on these two topics hopefully should do us well coming up less than 2 weeks from now. Now, it's interesting. I even looked at my marmakomos. All these marmakomos that you have in front of you are fresh. I did not give any of these marmakomos out 4 years ago. And really, it's interesting. The Mechaber in the Shulchan Aruch has an entire siman really laid out just for this scenario. Erev Pesach coming out on Shabbos is such a unique and halachically, important, challenging day that it deserves its own siman in Shulchan Aruch. What to do with it? Now, at first, one would say, in a year like this, when Erev Pesach comes out on Shabbos, it makes the entire Pesach Seder, the entire, preparations for Pesach seemingly much more complicated, much more harder. But at the same time, there is a silver lining, which we'll get to. But the basic important silver lining is once you get past, when do you have an Erev Pesach? where being the fact that it's on Shabbos, you can't do as much as you normally do every year. So people could come into Pesach, both men and women, more rested and more ready for seemingly the biggest night of the year. So that's a big silver lining we could talk about ahead of time. It's going to be more complicated and perhaps more stressful this Erev Pesach being on Shabbos. But the end goal, the silver lining, is the fact that you come into the Seder hopefully more relaxed, hopefully more refreshed, less tired, you can take a nap, and this way you're ready for a big night. Yes?
Can I eat my soup with knedlach?
We're going to touch on that 100%. So let's start. I'm going to read the Mechaber on top, or towards the top of your page first, and then we'll go off from there. Din Erev Pesach Shechol Lios B'Shabbos, Siman Tuf Mem Daled. Yodal Shechol Lios B'Shabbos, the 14th of Pesach, which comes out on Shabbos. Bodkin Lo Yud Gimel, we do Bedika on Thursday night. Umavar Lakol of Nea Shabbos, and we destroy everything before Shabbos. Right? You do your Bir Chametz on Friday morning, which is really the 13th day. Umisharin mazon shtei sudos tzarich Shabbos, but you leave over food for 2 meals on Shabbos. 2 meals? I thought we eat 3 meals on Shabbos. So right away, the Mechaber waves a white flag. The Suda Shlishis Zman Achar Mincha. Shal Shudas, we know the time to do it is usually after Mincha on Shabbos. Va'az inu yochel asoso lo b'matzah v'lo b'chametz. At that time, after Mincha, you can't eat matzah, but you also could no longer eat chametz. Elo b'matzah ashira. What best you could have is rich matzah. Now I told my guys in share, why did they, till this year I thought, why do they call it egg matzah, rich matzah? Because, the flavor of the eggs makes it, rich versus a simple matzah with just water.
Especially this year.
But this year,
The ingredients cost more.
matzah ashira, of course, the eggs. Now, for the record, El Presidente got the price of eggs lowered, but
El Presidente?
sorry for my Spanish.
Presidente Marco.
Yeah.
It's actually a very nice market.
Anyway, so the Mechaber talks about using matzah ashira. Okay. You have to eat it before the 10th hour of the day, because from that point on, you're not supposed to have a Suda on Erev Yontif. And this year, Shabbos, besides being Shabbos, also takes the halachic status of Erev Yontif, and you're not supposed to have a big meal before Yontif. So therefore, once the 10th hour of the day comes, you would have to do your washing and eating before that. Okay, that's all according to the Mechaber. Haggah. Umindinos Elo, in our Ashkenazi countries, She'ein Nogam Lachol Matzah Ashira. The Ramah over here writes, we do not eat matzah ashira like egg matzah. Kol kaman, Yikayim Suda Shlishit B'mina Peiros. For Shalosh Shudas, you should just have fruits, O B'basar V'dagim, or meat and or fish. And he writes, so just from reading the Mechaber, you already see there's a big controversy. What does one do for Shalosh Shudas? But really the issue which I'm going to tackle first is more basic. What do we do for the second meal of the day, second meal of Shabbos, the day Suda? Now, Friday night should be easy. Let's start from the top, right? We'll go through the 3 Sudas of Shabbos. Friday night could be relatively easy in the sense there's no time period. The only time Chametz is Aser comes Sof Zman Achila, which this year is going to come out on Shabbos morning. So Friday night, in terms of your timing of your meal, doesn't matter if you make an early Shabbos, later Shabbos. You could eat the meal whatever time you want, with one important caveat. Don't be careful with your chametz. Now, technically speaking, you could have chametz the entire meal, right? You could have challah the entire meal. You could have other foods of chametz, technically speaking. Many people will be nervous about such things. Be nervous about having chametz around your house. And obviously, it would be recommended for people to limit to whatever degree the chametz, because we'll talk about later what to do if you still have chametz around. But in terms of the timing, in terms of the menu, your actual meal could be, you could have lakshan kugel, right? Non-Pesach lakshan, legit, noodle kugels. You could have mizonos, chametz, that's okay. Just make sure that you keep it clean. That's Friday night.
No leftovers?
Huh? As long as we'll see soon when you have to eat them by. Comes Shabbos morning, and this is where it gets all complicated. You have to eat a Shabbos meal, which you'll eat we know that the essence of a meal on Shabbos is washing, having hamotzi, your lachem mishnah, and that you need to finish before the sof zman achila. Now, I didn't check before the share. What time is the sof zman achila here? Anyone know? No, it's earlier than that. Anyone know the exact timing here in Florida?
11:34.
Huh?
So that's probably around 10:34.
You say the number's around 10:30?
So.
Is the Gra, Magen Avram, you have the times already?
No, I don't know how to get to it, but
Oh.
that's a shame.
No, hold on. So, I have 4 people working on it. I don't need to try your phone.
10:50 Magen Avram.
5 people.
About 11.
Huh?
10:50 Magen Avram. 11.
10:50?
Yeah.
Okay, the early Zman is about 10:50. Okay? I trust you. The early Zman is about 10:50. So that is a very important step. What that means, first and foremost, the Shabura talks about it, is you're going to have to daven early Shabbos morning. All the shuls, I believe, are going to have early Zmanim, some maybe as early as Nate's, to daven early Shabbos morning. So you could go home, eat your lechem mishnah, which I'll talk in a moment, if you choose to have full-fledged chametz, but to have that lechem mishnah before about the early Zman, sounds like 10:50-ish over here in Florida.
11:14 for the grub.
Huh?
Following the grub, it's 11:14.
Okay, well, we'll first start the early.
It's 10:50.
A lot.
I wonder what the Zman is in New York. How much earlier is in New York? Right? Okay, we're estimating it's about a half hour earlier. So that would be like 10:20. So that's pretty early. So the first thing you're going to notice is we're going to daven early because we want to make sure to finish whatever we need to eat before the Zman. Now, the only thing you need to eat, potentially, of chametz, is your lechem mishnah. The rest of the meal, definitely, right, at this point, it would be required to have a Pesach tikka meal. Now, you can work backwards. If your food for Shabbos day already has to be Pesach tik, then really, most balabastas, most people will say, okay, so I might as well have the whole Shabbos Pesach tik. The kitchen's Pesach tik, fine, kol kavod. But for the record, Friday night, you would be able to have chametz with your meal, but obviously be careful to get rid of it all. But Shabbos day, your meal, the chametz part of it, has to conclude before the sof zman achila. Now, this is all true, this is all our focus right now on your regular Shabbos day meal. I'm going to jump for a moment, but I'm going to circle back to it after, just to put in perspective, what about Shalosh Shudas?
No splitting.
Now, we're going to come back to what one should do practically for Shalosh Shudas, but I just want to show one position. There are those that say, look, ideally you're supposed to wash for Shalosh Shudas. Again, the same issues. I want to make sure the issues are spelled out clear. You cannot eat matzah on Erev Pesach. Regular full-fledged matzah that you're going to eat the night of Pesach is 100% usher to eat. People get confused about this. There are different minhagim when it comes to eating matzah before Pesach. The matzah, some people have a minhag even as far as 30 days.
30 days.
Some people have from today, from Rosh Chodesh. There are different minhagim. But don't get those minhagim confused with the halacha of eating matzah on Erev Pesach. According to everybody, it's Gemara. Eating matzah on Erev Pesach is 100% usher. One cannot do that.
So when you spoke with people having a Pesach and Shabbos,
Yes.
are they supposed to have the non-Pesach matzah with it? What I mean?
Yes.
It's not a Pesach
So
Shabbos
I'm gonna
anymore.
correct. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Yes, it's going to be very tricky now with your foods to make sure your chametz and matzah or chametz and Pesach foods are separate, especially for the day meal where post the Sov's Manachila, you're in trouble. You can't eat. So I'll get to that practically. But I want to show you the following point. Is there some that say for Shalosh Shudas, what are you going to do? You can't have matzah. Same thing like we talked about by Shachris. You can't have matzah. And if I wait till after Mincha time, then for sure it's past the Sof's Manachil. I can't have chametz or matzah. Okay, so Mechava talked about having egg matzah, but the Mishnah Berurah brings down an idea to potentially split your day meal, your Shabbos morning meal, into two meals, where you would wash, eat something, I would say eat something nice with after your challah, so there's a meal is not just washing. Then we'll talk about taking some type of break, benching and a break, and then washing again to get a third one in. Now again, for to do that, you need a lot of time, right? For sure you need to daven nates or quite early to make sure you get your times in. But I'm pointing that out just to see the scheme of things, what you need to do Shabbos morning. It's very complicated. I'll circle back to Shalosh Shudas in a moment. If you're doing that type of meal, you're going to be doing that all way before Mincha time.
Yeah,
Because, right, the Sov's Man Achila is 10:50 here in Florida, 10:20 in New York.
Then is
So-
there still any need to have fruit or something after mincha?
No, that would be you'd be doing an early Shalosh Shudas, which would be okay in this situation. Now I'm going to circle back to Shalosh Shudas, but I just want to give that picture of what potentially you need to do Shabbos morning with the bread, with the food. Now, let's talk practically. Let's go back to the Shabbos morning meal. Forget about Shalosh Shudas for the meantime. What does one do? So I could put in front of you two big options, and within the options, we'll do subtleties. The first big shiloh you have to ask yourself is, what am I making hamotzi on? Am I making it on full-fledged chametz? Or option B, egg matzah? Those are two big options. Egg matzah would be your matzah ashira. I'll first talk about the egg matzah for a minute. Egg matzah is definitely something that people consider due to the fact it's not what we call normally real chametz. It might be the type of thing that one normally, with normal health conditions, does not eat on Pesach, but we don't view it as, right? Yeah, you definitely could own it. It's not something which we're afraid to have in the house for Pesach. So in a certain sense, it's the safest thing to have around. So technically speaking, one could clean their house totally chametz free. And they could use for the night meal, for the day meal, egg matzah. And that will solve them from any issues of quote unquote coming in contact with chametz. You burned your chametz on Friday morning, that was the end of it. Nothing left. That is a path that many take. Rav Moshe Feinstein was one to permit such an idea. However, luckily speaking, there are little tricks with that. There are some tricky steps in that. Yes.
Is there a different shear in the amount of egg
So
matzah?
I'm about to talk about that. Fantastic. First of all, I have down that Reuben Feinstein said his father permitted it, but if you asked, his father himself didn't do it. How much does one need to eat? Being the fact this is not regular bread, right? Regular matzah is your simple flour and water. Here you have mixed an egg, so there it's questionable how much does one eat in order to be counted as kovea suda for matzah. So there it's debatable whether it's one beya, two beyas. There are those who say, listen to this, in order to be yotzi hamotzi, you need one full egg matzah. So if you think of the thing, you would have to eat one full one. Now think about it. If you're going to plan to be fully Pesach going into Shabbos, that means Friday night, you would eat one big matzah.
It's usually
Shabbos day, one big matzah. So for some people, if you're looking the easier way out, it's easier in terms of chametz. Egg matzah is maybe easier to eat, softer than your regular matzah, but the amount you need to eat is a sizable amount. Okay, some who say the share is maybe less than that, especially you're eating other foods. Okay, but Lamaisa, definitely not simple in that sense. One has been accustomed to doing this in the past, and this is what works best for them. Kol kavod. Moshe Feinstein permitted it, and it's a way to go with egg matzah. And if one's better half says, we're not having any chametz in the house. Okay, that's what you're going to do.
You go to Humra, do you have to have shmura egg matzah?
No, you don't need to have shmura egg matzah. Now, always making trouble. That's option one. Option one is you go the egg matzah path, and with that, you have pros and cons, you have pluses and minuses. Alternative path is to go full-fledged chametz. Now, even within this, I could give suggestions. The classic thing people do is just, you have challah. Now, it might be smarter on a week like this if you're using challah instead of using bichalos, which you cut up and, right? Maybe to get challah rolls. This way you have a defined part. Now, we could give a share, Berg, I'm sure you have what to say about it, about the shrinking size of challah rolls. Right? Challah rolls used to be big. You go around, right? These things, my gosh. Huh?
You haven't been to a chasana lately? There are two kinds of chasana.
No, those are the big ones. I'm talking about regular challah rolls, just like the orange juices, right? it looks like they shrink a lot. So exactly I'm not going to get involved with exactly how much of a challah roll because
Same price though.
Same price. Because there's no set amount, as opposed to the matzahs. To their credit, I haven't seen shrinkage in those matzahs yet. Right, in the machine matzah is still the same size. Right. Now, a challah roll might be a best way to go, better than cut up challah, but there's even a better way people talk about is having pita.
Something not good.
Well, if one right? We're not getting involved in taste, right? Al tam v'reach. But pita is the type of bread which doesn't crumble as much. And if we're nervous, rightfully so, about the crumbs, pita might be better. I saw a little bit of a discussion, some people hawking about the fact that some Sephardim, if you look at their matzah itself resembles pita. So they talk about, oh, so since it looks like that, there's some gzera, you can't have it. But pashtas, our pitas are not the same as theirs, and they're much, much different. And seemingly it is a valid option if one is going to use chametz. Again, recommended to use rolls versus a bechala, but maybe even better than that, assuming you're comfortable with the taste, to have some nice fresh pita, right? Roll.
I can cover chocolate.
Huh? Yes.
What about the kalim? If you're Friday night, you already got a machloket.
That's my next question. Next issue I'm going to deal with. Fantastic.
Why don't we have the same argument with egg matzah? It's supposed to go with the Pesach, with the desire for matzah.
Very good point. I almost thought of bringing that up. You reflect back for a minute. I'll go back to that. You know, the isser of eating matzah on Erev Pesach, pashtos, only applies to matzah that I could be yotzei the seder with. So since egg matzah in most situations you're not going to be yotzei with, so that'll be okay. But I do agree, if you have to stuff down your throat these, a whole matzah, and it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth before eating matzah that night, that's another consideration to consider your last licks of chametz.
You also have an issue, it's a smaller issue, I think, in chinuch. You have children trying to b'chayich, children not before, now all of a sudden it's matzah on the table.
Yeah. Now, I want to show you this quickly. Just go through. I missed it. The Sharat Tzion in Os Aleph, the end of the first line writes, Ubir Hagra, Etzadi Dildas Rambam, also Lecho Matzah Shira. For the record, and the Chavetz Chaim brings us in, only in the footnotes in the bottom, he doesn't bring it inside the Mishnah Berurah, but he does bring the daya that egg matzah, the Gra said, one does not use. So there are those who say not to use egg matzah, so that would be an advantage of using, or Moshe was willing to, take the burden of the responsibility, and he said you could use egg matzah. Again, gets into these issues. So you have your basic two options, egg matzah or full-fledged chametz. If you're going to go the full-fledged chametz route, so a few things. Number one, definitely one should use, disposable plates, napkins. You should be very, very careful eating that chametz, especially Shabbos morning. Number two, I think it's potentially another thing people recommend, and we could potentially do that here in Florida, is to eat outside. One has room outside their house to eat. One potentially, even just for hamotzi, kiddush and hamotzi, could potentially eat outside their house. To go back in and eat the rest does get complicated with different brachos, but again, assuming you have in mind, you can see the place. It could get complicated in Hilchos brachos, but in terms of your chametz, here in Florida, Bez Hashem, hopefully we have good weather 2 weeks from now, that could be a very enjoyable. In this way, you don't have the chametz in your house. You pay something like a house, you don't have the chametz there. I should say this. I still remember Rabbi Sharfman, days before chametz, before Pesach, sitting on a little chair, on the little step right outside his house. At that point, Rabbi Sharfman said, "No more chametz in the house." I drove past, I believe multiple times. I saw him sitting there eating his chametz outside the house.
He's pretty tall for that.
Yeah, I hope it was a big stool, but yeah.
And we don't have to worry about the crumbs falling on the ground.
Either way, he looked like he was in Gullus, right?
But on Shabbos, we don't have to worry about crumbs falling on the grass and all that sort of stuff.
So correct. If it's your grass, if it was your house, you would have to worry more. Yes. But again, whatever one could do with the disposableness and make sure all the crumbs are satisfied, that's always very, very important. Now,
So, question.
yes.
So are you better off shaking out your plastic tablecloth that you're using onto the grass of the crumbs, or just rolling it up and putting it in your garbage can?
Here's the big deal. Great question. Question was posed, okay, assuming that I'm in New York, I'm in Montreal, it's cold outside, I'm eating inside my house. I am using chametz. So let's say I have one of these disposable tablecloths. What should I do with it? Fantastic question. What should I do with it? Now, really, the best thing I would say is, besides the tablecloth, it's really best to eat over a napkin. So it's not even the issue of getting on a broader tablecloth. You're going to absorb all your, if there's any crumbs, not any pizza, any crumbs to get on the napkin, which is much easier to dispose of versus on the whole tablecloth. And anytime you roll up a tablecloth, make sure nothing falls out. Napkins seemingly are easier for that. Now, what do you do with those crumbs? So here's the story. If you put in the garbage in your house and the garbage in your house stays in your house, that's not good. Really, any chametz stick of garbage has to go out of your house. Now, here in South Florida, assuming there's an Erev, right? And assuming the garbage receptacles are not considered yours, they're considered the city's, one would be able to dump their chametz stick of garbage into those garbage receptacles on Shabbos morning.
Even if it's remaining on your property and not out by the street.
Yeah. Okay, it's better to put it out by the street, but it's not yours either way.
You usually don't use the
Right?
roof, put it on the square.
Correct. Now, in New York, and I know they keep on changing the garbage laws I hear over there, but New York, you have much more problems over there, right? At least till recently, we're talking about your own garbage cans. So there you have a problem. The simplest answer is you have to flush it down the toilet. Whatever crumbs you have, right? You have a ceremony in the bathroom. Really, by flushing it down the toilet.
But then you walk into the bathroom to do it.
Yeah. Now, let me spell this out very clearly, is one has to be very smart how much chametz they buy if they're going to go the chametz option. How much chametz they're going to have in their house Shabbos morning. The leftovers, what are you going to do with them? You're going to be flushing loaves of chametz down your toilet, right? Talk about plumbing problems before Pesach begins. Not recommended. So you should be very exact on your, now it's tricky. I have to be careful when I say very exact, because if you run out, you don't have enough of a share. You have one extra guest by a Shabbos table, Shabbos morning, you can't go knocking on doors. Anyone have any leftover chametz? Like, not so easy. Okay, you normally could borrow things from your neighbors here. So again, you got to wake up early Shabbos morning. This way we can deal with all our problems. But in a certain sense, as I'm saying all the problems, people are saying, Rabbi, just use egg matzah. You're right. If you use egg matzah, you avoid these problems. You have other problems. But you got to be very careful with your chametz. That's important. Now, here's a step. I want to do a couple more steps. I'm watching the clock. I'll get back to everybody. Interesting question, Rabbi. You just said you have to be very careful with how much chametz you have. Now, what do I make hamotzi on? Shabbos, we know the mitzvah to be motzi on lachem mishnah. So, if it's you and somebody else, that's very easy. Table for two. You have one chal row, again, assuming it's a good enough size, and They have one challah roll. So you have two challah rolls, you have your Lacha Mishnah, you finished, you're good. What happens if you're by yourself? What do you do for that second Lacha Mishnah?
Eat it.
Huh?
Eat it.
So the answer is, yeah, you got to eat it. That's one way to get rid of it, right? Jews have been getting rid of chametz for years, eating it themselves, huh?
Can you give it to your Goyish neighbor?
Ah, so here's where things get a little tricky, right? You have to realize you need Lacha Mishnah, and you need that Lacha Mishnah to be chametz free and to deal with it. So what do? So if you eat them both, you're covered, granted. But what happens if you're not able to eat both? So there is an interesting discussion I found from the poskim. They talk about, could I use a matzah for my second of my Lecha Mishnah? Can I use a matzah for the second of my Lecha Mishnah? The first thing is, if you're going to use a matzah, it's got to be inside Fort Knox. It's got to be wrapped up, totally separate from the challah. But this is a very interesting halacha. In theory, you could have chametz and matzah on your table. This year, Shabbos, Erev Pesach, you could have chametz and matzah there. You'll make hamotzi on chametz, on your challah, but you could use a matzah for your second of your Lecha Mishnah. Fascinating psak halacha. I saw it brought down, I believe, from the Stipler, the Chazon Ish. They say such a psak. Amazing.
How do you measure pita if you're going to make a bracha over pita bread? If you're motzi, is it just two pieces of pita? I mean,
yes, same thing. Yes, just think. As long as they're whole, use those for Lecha Mishnah. Yes, they're okay. But if you're using matzah, very interesting halacha. Matzah could count for your second of your Lecha Mishnah, even though the following very interesting halachic issue is I mentioned before, could one eat that matzah today? No. So I'm using one of my Lecha Mishnahs is usher to eat.
It's like having a trauma.
Right? But nevertheless, no, today, right now, it's usher for me to eat the matzah. Because it's Erev Pesach. Shabbos Erev Pesach. I can't eat that matzah, but yet there are poskim that will say you're allowed to use that as your Lecha Mishnah because your Lecha Mishnah just needs, in theory, to be bread. You could take that's a much an easier step. You could even take a frozen challah, it's rock hard. You could use that as Lecha Mishnah for any Shabbos of the year. If you're missing a Lecha Mishnah, pull one out of the freezer. That counts. I can't eat it. It'll take a day till this, subsides. That's okay. But here, the big chiddush is even matzah, which is also for one to eat, one would be allowed to use for Lecha Mishnah. I would point out, it is a little bit tricky, that psak, and how you deal with it, is, I wanted to discuss for a moment the halachas of muksa. Muksa says that one cannot move something which cannot be used in Shabbos. Matzah for the Seder. Is one allowed to move on Shabbos this year? Shabbos, Erev Pesach.
We use it tonight, no? Friday night?
You can't. Right? Very good question. Friday night. I mean, if you don't have the minhag, the Isser is only mibod yom.
Yeah.
Tricky. Okay, so you want to say, therefore, it's not considered muksa for Shabbos. 2 points. There are those who say it's muksa, right?
If you have little kids who don't know
the Beferisha, Prima Kadim says it's usher. Yes.
I have a philosophical issue.
Okay.
When we make kiddush on Shabbos, we cover the challahs.
Yes.
Why?
Shouldn't be embarrassed. According to one pshat.
So now, on this particular Shabbos, we're taking a challah and a matzah, we're covering it up with all sorts of stuff, We're insulting that piece of matzah. Are we not? No, I'm serious. It's a serious question.
Yeah, the insult to the challah on a normal Shabbos is you're bypassing it to do kiddush first, make a bracha on the wine before the challah. So the insult is a bracha insult. The insult is not the using of it. It's perfect care. The reason why I'm not eating it now is because it's so special to me, and I'll be using it tonight. So view those extra layers of protection. That's how you think you wrap up a diamond, nothing. It's chashav, right? Understand what the language of Chazal use, why it's usher on Erev Yontif. It shows how chaviv it is. Now, one other halacha of muksa when it comes up is very important. I have it here on the sheets in the Mishnah Berurah. If you look in the bottom line of the Mishnah Berurah in Chaf Aleph, obviously this shouldn't be. You should get rid of all your chametz, sof zman achila, sof zman beer. Make sure to get rid of all your chametz. Let's say, unfortunately, you don't. And there are, this could definitely happen. You have a regular Suda Shabbos morning, right? So you had your chametz, but you had some crumbs that you had in a napkin, and you didn't get rid of them yet. And you have multiple guests over in your Shabbos table, and the meal's going and going. Now, really, once you start your Shabbos meal, and you have to get back to Shal Shadas, but you can keep on going. It's a regular meal. So you have a nice geschmacka conversation, and you realize, oh my gosh, I forgot to get rid of that chametz. Never got rid of it. It's already past an hour later. It's past Shal Shishis. V'nishta at Shal Shishis, the oz aser ba'ana, the asa betiltol. Chametz, once the Zman Isser comes, is muksa. One can't touch it.
Oh boy.
Right? He says, Afil achi shari de akum sheyizruko benar o beis hakisei. Mishnah Berurah does give a heter to get rid of it, to get a guy involved, to throw it into the river, or the guy should flush it down your toilet. You can imagine that, Amir al-Akum. I need your help. I forgot to flush. I forgot to flush my hollow bread down the toilet. Could you help me? Right? He could be your Shabbos guy all year round. If you're going to ask him to flush your hollow bread down the toilet, and they're going to be coming for you in the white jackets very soon.
Does it help to say something to the guy before Yom Tov?
Tell him before Shabbos, I might need you to flush things down my toilet.
No, we're not.
That's not a good idea, no. Anyway, so we're both sad. We got to get things done the right way before. Amazing.
Okay.
Yes, I can see a clip of this going viral and we're in big trouble. Yes.
Did you turn off the chair?
No, it's still going. I have to finish Shal Shudas. Oh yeah, I'm watching the clock. I'm already over. Let me just finish.
Okay.
Shal Shudas. So the Mishnah Berurah does bring down the idea of splitting the Suda into two. I spoke with a posek, and he said, yeah, that's what Mishnah Berurah says. That's what I tell people to do. Ideally, that's what one should do. I asked, and what would you say to somebody who on a normal week doesn't necessarily wash for Shal Shudas? So you can just go all jump through loops to do crazy maneuvers. This Shabbos Erev Pesach, just to go. Yes, on the same question. Just to go and eat your Shal Shudas with bread. He says, yeah, this should be the first of all the weeks, so you start doing it the right way. So I wasn't so happy about that answer.
If it's going to start a
right? So look, there are different people. I have down here Beferish. This is a new sefer that came out since 4 years ago. That Moshe Feinstein did not split his suit into two. Right? He recommended, he gave a heter for the egg matzahs, but he also said, don't make yourself crazy with the double sudas. It's machlokes, this. So what one could then do is do shalosh shudas with some nice foods later. And if anything, sometimes until you eat on Pesach night, it's pretty late. Now you're not supposed to have a big suda Pesach, Erev Pesach in the afternoon, right? We said already after the 10th hour for sure not. But to have something, some ta'ameha, something that will keep you, so that could be your shalosh shudas. If it's basar or dagim, that's for sure yotze shalosh shudas. I think that's a very normal, good way to do it. You daven mincha, right? You want to get all things well. You can do mincha earlier.
Not wine.
Yeah, but do that. That might be your best bet. If you want to split your suit into two, call kavod. You have to take the bench. You have to take a break. Machlokas, whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Yeah, knedalach. Definitely poskim that allow for it. And that if you special. Yeah. But no, I saw this. It's very important. I'm gonna have to bemoan about this later. But this Pesach I have a new guest coming, my son-in-law, and he's makbid on gebrux. So, but I checked on Erev Pesach. There's no issues of gebrux.
You didn't check this before the shidduch.
I know. My wife asked me the same question.
These are the questions you gotta ask.
Yes.
The trick is
Whatever.
So if you're using matzah, you can put butter on it and it won't be gebrux for Friday night, let's say. It's not gebrux.
No problems. Yeah. On the Erev, on Shabbos Erev Pesach, you don't have to worry about gebrux.
First 2 days.
So one thought that I had is we have to watch how much challah we have for each person in the house, counting it out.
Yes.
So there should be a bracha that we're learning what to do when we have to bring korban Pesach, and each person has to be
set
counted out in
amount.
the
Okay,
house.
beautiful. Lamaisa, I'll conclude with something we started with. Is as you see from the day's share, if you just zero in on the pseudos of Shabbos Erev Pesach itself, it gets quite complicated. But there is a beautiful silver lining: is a person be able to come into Pesach with a Shabbos, which is the best day of the week, where you could sleep in the afternoon and you're not busy cooking right before Pesach. It's Shabbos already. You could come in like a mensch, and really Pesach is the day that we view ourselves. We're not slaves anymore. We're not slaving in the kitchen. We're not slaves to Paro. And we should feel like what we truly are. Mamlechas Kohanim v'Glei Kadosh, we're princes. We should feel that, especially in our times. So much suffering, so much sorrows. A year like this, times like this, it's important for us, despite all the sorrows, despite all the galos, but Nisan Asin Ligal, the month of Nisan, is a time we look forward to our redemption, and we should be zocha to come into this Pesach with everything good, and we should have a kosher and a wonderful Pesach. Thank you very much. Tune in next week for one more share before Pesach.